Good afternoon, good morning, and welcome to Two Guys Discussing Software. Myself, Tomás O'Leary, and my good colleague Brendan Walsh.
It remains two Irish guys discussing software.
I know, but we do this every week, and I have to leave it out. Yeah. As I said, my name is Tomás O'Leary. Delighted to be here again, and here with my good friend Brendan Walsh. You hear the dulcet tones there, and we're on episode 5 of our podcast. It feels nicer today. The sun is shining. We're here in Dublin, in Ireland.
Yeah, I think we're getting used to these.
Yeah, no, it's we're excited. I'm excited. I'm really excited today, and we have.
We're in a new location as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
Not far from our last location, but it's bright and sunny, and we've got traffic going around the place here. It's like the software world. It's just crazy busy out there. We have a really good speaker later on, Daniel Begg from Aberdeen Standard Investments, who we know quite well.
Yeah, I was with Danny last week at ITAM.
In Twickenham.
Yeah, very nice few days. Wisdom actually was called this time around. So.
The ITAM Review Conference.
Yeah,
very good, yeah.
It was very good, very topical.
Excellent.
And some of the topics for today's discussion were front and centre last week, so some from our other friends were also presenting on some topics of note. So
good. So I don't know whether you've been watching our videos. Did you see the shark-proof one? This is the topic from shark-proof forced upgrades. We'll have a chat about that later. But maybe before we do that, we just talk about some of the things we've been seeing. I talk about things that are being forced upon you. Did you see, and I know you did, did you see 2,000 jobs going from IBM? 2,000 more jobs on top of the several hundred that they've let go in India. It just never stops. Apparently the reason that they're letting them go is because they are worried about their individual performances. I just wonder what Ginny Rometty is doing about her particular individual performance. Is she on the list, do you think?
Yeah, unlikely. Yeah.
Are some of the executives on the list, do you think?
The SH1T flows downhill, doesn't it?
Yeah.
As my mother would say, she never said the word.
SH1T.
Yeah.
That's very true. Well, they're about to sell off some of their crown jewels to HCL, as we know. We did a webinar on that recently. It's been talked about a lot. Lots of people have been talking about it since actually IBM and nor HCL have been doing a lot of talking about on it.
And another few thousand employees being cooped over, I think is the word, over to HCL or just moving over with the acquisition. And
it's really interesting that it's gone to HCL, who are a really good company, and I like them as an organisation. But when you look and consider what Ginny Rometty said about Indian workers, I was quite surprised. Actually, she was critical of their skills. It's quite unusual then to sell it to an Indian company. I just thought all of that distasteful.
It's a bit tasteful, yeah.
Distasteful, yes, indeed.
Yeah, it's a bit two-faced.
Totally. So I was quite shocked at that, and all of the people there let them go. Well, that would be an interesting thing to see what happens over the next 6 months with HCL and IBM. But I mean, we've talked about that before, so we won't talk about that again. I did want to talk to you about a couple of things I've seen outside of IBM just for a moment.
All right.
We love to talk about IBM, of course.
Just for a moment,
it's our favourite topic. But looking at Oracle and Microsoft, you see they've got together in the cloud world. They have this kind of new venture they're kicking off.
Right. Tell me more.
That's as far as I know. That's all I know.
Yeah, well, keep it to yourself.
That's fine. Well, I don't know if anybody knows anything else. I mean, I'm not sure how these kind of mega joint ventures work. They tend to just be fresh air. Right?
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Until one of them sues the other over some kind of IP infringement or
Yes, and poor Larry Ellison. Poor Larry Ellison. I'm actually just quite shocked and saddened by it.
He hasn't had another wage cut, has he?
No, he didn't. 420 million he lost on Tesla. 420 million.
Okay, that's big.
Well, it's a lot less than Elon Musk lost. He lost, I think, nearly 5 billion. So
I think my son lost 20 euros using one of the trading platforms as well. So but he's going to buy it. He's going to buy it back. He thinks when they move production to China, that it'll be a lot more mass market, and they'll actually have a bounce back. So he's confident actually, and so maybe Larry should pile back in again.
We'll tell him not to buy Microsoft, because Microsoft are now past the $1 trillion mark. So I don't know. I mean, I think a
lot of gains there.
A small finger in the mouth. $1 trillion. I don't know if there's much more.
It can only go one way.
I think
perhaps.
So.
Yeah.
Who was the last guy to go 1 trillion? Was it Apple? And I don't know. They kind of fell back a little bit. So I think it's kind of tricky to stay over 1 trillion. It's kind of that like a number too far. It feels like
it's a good number though.
Yeah. And I see Oracle is in court again. Yeah, again. They kind of like the courtroom.
I think they have a lot of lawyers.
Yeah, I'd say they do. Well, I heard allegedly that there is a court case. Well, it probably is not more than allegedly because it's in the press. But just in case, it's allegedly they have been in court with a pension fund from Germany.
It's to do with financial creativity. I think
it's inflating their allegedly inflating their cloud revenue.
Yeah.
Allegedly they have been doing audits.
Who does that?
No idea. Have you been looking at the news?
Because
there's two Irish guys in this one.
Yeah, speaking of the cloud, I know, but I'd like to let you start and then I'll jump in and take over. But there's been a couple of other interesting things happening in the cloud world. I'll stick to my side of what I know, which is some of the acquisitions. So some pretty big acquisitions recently. I don't know if they're seen as kind of competitive acquisitions. So one company buys a piece of data visualization and analytics software, so the other one does too. But hot on the heels of the Google acquisition of Looker, which was a 2.6 billion acquisition of a data analytics and visualization piece of software, which to kind of enhance their cloud offering. Salesforce spent, I think Danny knows this one, he's coming on the call shortly, 15.7 billion on Tableau, acquiring Tableau. And I did a bit of research, and the last valuation I could see on Tableau, or 15.7 billion, was 10.7 billion. So it seems like a massive overpayment for something that was only recently valued at just short of 10 million. So, but Tableau do have 86,000 customers, and it just shows a bit of diversification again of some of these big cloud-based solution providers typically buying data visualization and analytics tools to enhance their cloud offering. So, but still, the IBM acquisition of Red Hat of 34 billion, it still dwarfs those two by some amount. So.
And Tableau's revenues are sub $1 billion, isn't that right?
Yeah, something like that. So it's a 15 times revenue, which is nice. But it's an all-stock deal. I think there's no cash on the table, so I'm not sure how much cash the shareholders might have taken out of that one. But
and Tableau is a competitor to Cognos. So we see it a lot in customers moving to Tableau away from Cognos. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I did actually ask a client recently that was migrating away from Cognos, where might they be going? And allegedly they said that Tableau was one of those applications. So it's been around for a long time. I think it was set up in about 2003. So that's about $1 billion a year valuation. It's not bad.
Wow. Yeah, that's something else. Okay, good. I want to bring it back to that forced revenue calculation we were talking about earlier, that Oracle, and on that note I'll introduce our guests. Danny, have you joined us? Are you there with us now?
Yeah, how's it going, Thomas? How are you, Brendan?
Excellent. Good to talk to you, Danny. You're now taking on a new role in, I believe, Service Protection Manager at Aberdeen Standard Investments. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is. I started here last week. It's quite a bit of a different role. Admittedly, I do like the new job description because it kind of plays a lot into ITAM. Protecting the company and protecting the services that ITAM offers. A different type of name, but actually quite fitting.
And where are we talking to you now? Whereabouts are you? Are you in Edinburgh?
In Edinburgh now, yeah.
One of my favourite cities in the world. It's just such a stunning city. What did you think of that case? We were talking about a bit of news there. The one I thought you might be interested in is the alleged one where I believe it's investment arm of DZ Bank Group and also a firefighters pension fund from the US, I believe it is. They have been suing Oracle, allegedly, over deals that they've been cutting where they're allowing on audit, waiving fines and fees due to organizations who've been cut out on audits and getting them to actually buy cloud services, cloud solutions, and then counting them as revenue when in actual fact they may not be even being used. So it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because the reason for the audit, the suing is actually an inflation of their share price, which is potentially putting the pension funds at risk, I'd imagine. Had you heard about this one?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of talk, I think, in the industry about how Oracle are doing this. I don't think anyone really believes that Oracle's position on their cloud platform is really as good as what they've been making out for a number of years. And using the typical audit of, these guys are probably getting paid more for actually selling the cloud services than they would do for their traditional on-prem services. So by actually settling an audit, by actually saying, well, if you buy all of these cloud services, we'll let all the on-prem, just disappear. Now, the customer may not even ever use the on-cloud services, but if it solves their problem on site at that present moment in time, it's commercially sound to go, well, I get a deal out of this, they get a deal out of it. How they want to account for it is up to them.
Yeah, you're talking about sales guys, is it? Sales reps in...
Yeah, the accountants. Yeah, maybe that's part of the drive with Azure and the Oracle link-up, of that, the infrastructure being able to be shared across both of those services. So, if you want to have Oracle in Azure, then perfectly fine. You want to have Windows and Oracle, that's also perfectly fine, That interoperability, maybe they've actually come to a realization that if they need to compete with Amazon, then they need to get much smarter, much bigger, much quicker in order to be able to get that.
Yeah, I know we dismissed it a little bit there, the Oracle Microsoft tie-up. I'd say it's a lot more to do with Oracle's distaste for AWS. Less so Microsoft. I don't see that there's a distaste there. Obviously, they compete, but certainly there seems to be a distaste whenever you hear any discourse from Larry Ellison about AWS. He has a bit of a problem there. So I suspect that's where he's coming from. Have you seen? You talk about sales reps pushing cloud offerings. Have you seen that with the likes of IBM? Have they done something in your experience in the past?
Although IBM have the software, so they have their cloud offering. And I've used a bit of software before, and you get an awful lot of alerts saying this service is offline. That one's going to be. I've no idea on how IBM are pushing that. I think that with the acquisition that they did recently, I think all of their forces are going to go into how they're actually going to merge that in with their business without breaking it, because IBM has had the reputation previously of buying companies that are very good and then just not doing anything with them or putting them into some kind of holding pattern while they try and amalgamate them, at which point by the time that service comes back out to customers, it's behind the curve. Do you know what I mean? So, if they get that right, they might actually do quite well. But I think it's kind of gone, well, maybe we can't do our own service, but buying this one here, Red Hat, is actually going to do everything we need for us.
Have you seen, though, from a sales point of view, I've come across these dual entitlement licenses where it seems to be that, you've got your on-prem, whatever it might be, Domino server and your Cal licenses, and you can take an option for a dual entitlement license. So you're still on-prem, but it's, from what I hear, allegedly, the dual entitlement portion is actually, it would be captured in the financial statements as cloud revenue because the option is there, even though the client necessarily hasn't taken up the option. And then at the end of the dual entitlement period, you have to decide. And from what I can gather, most people decide to stay on-prem and don't actually move to the cloud, and therefore it's kind of false cloud revenue. Have you seen much of that?
Yeah, no. So I haven't seen any of that, but it's not other realms of possibility that they do. I mean, since you can run most of the IBM stuff in the cloud if you wanted to anyhow, as long as you've got your ILMT server out there to be able to record what it's being actually run on, can you actually count everything that's been in the cloud, whether you're running on-prem or not? I don't know how all of these larger tier one vendors are actually doing their accounting, especially with cloud being so prevalent and what people are actually wanting to get out of it. It seems that there's a lot of different ways of thinking on how to account and finance these things. So,
tricks in the accounting trade that could account for anything as cloud if you wanted to. So I suppose it's whatever the KPI is for the month,
Yeah. What does a company do if they have, an application running on, multiple layers of software and they just are happy with it? Bring it back to some of these things, that these forced upgrades, a topic we want to talk about a little bit, is, what do they do? When the organization, or maybe there's multiple layers, so it's not just, say, IBM, it could be, it could be Linux, it could be an operating environment, it could be, so they have to move to a higher version, even though actually they're perfectly happy. But we feel we experience this as consumers with our phones now. We're almost forced to go to a higher level of operating system, even though we don't want to necessarily, or we're almost forced to buy a new phone. I mean, I have an iPhone 6. I'm very happy with it. The only thing I'm disappointed in is I can't charge it on those mobile,
the cordless chargers.
Cordless chargers.
But nobody's forcing you to upgrade. I mean, is it not an option?
Yeah.
I think people feel like they're being forced.
Maybe.
Or don't know that they have an option.
Yeah.
There's a bit of both there, guys, to be honest with you. I mean, look, we all know that manufacturers of software, and this goes across all vendors. I don't think it makes any difference, what name we end up putting it under. They all do exactly the same. They need to push their product forward. But in order to push their product forward, the bit of functionality that you actually originally bought in it, may allow you to transform A into transform B. And that's what it does. And version 1 does it, and so does version 10. But version 10 also allows you to do 50 other things. You may not want any of those other things, but you're still, because you're still doing what it did in version 1. It gets down to when it becomes obsolescence. When they say we're no longer supporting it, and you as a company, such as a lot of financial organizations, have problems with running obsolescent software, because of course even the FCA and the Bank of England say that you shouldn't really run obsolescent software, and so they kind of feel that they're being forced to upgrade, even from a regulatory point of view, rather than a actual need point of view, because it still does exactly the same job as it does before. I think there's an awful lot of scare tactics in relation to saying, well, you won't get security updates because we don't support the product anymore, so there could be vulnerability flaws in it. And I kind of go, well, look, no one writes code anymore to go and exploit version 3.11 of Windows. Do you know what I mean? But it's obsolescent, and it still does the job that it wanted to do originally. In fact, first versions of Word still write a letter, but no one writes any code to try and exploit any exploits in it. So you kind of have to think, is it really needed? But I think some people feel they are being forced, and not just by the vendors, but by other, other regulatory bodies, in order to try and keep up with things. And some people feel that they need to be on the latest version because that's the best practice. I don't like to be forced into things. I don't think most architects like to be forced into actually upgrading software, because it's additional work for no additional benefit to the company, no additional business value. Not only that, it's expensive. Every single time you go and change one thing, what's the knock-on effect? Do I need to now upgrade another piece of software from version 4 to version 6, even though version 4 is still in support and not a need to, but I've got to because of this other version I'm having to move. Do you know what I mean? You end up with this whole program of works just to move from one version to the next version. So what you end up getting is a lot of companies will go from version 5 to version 6, even though the latest version is version 11. Version 6 goes out of support in 6 months' time, and then they're running to try and get from version 6 to version 7, because they can't make the big jumps in upgrades because of the knock-on effect of that software on all other parts of the organization. And if they upgraded it so quickly, they wouldn't be able to actually be able to do business. Now, I know vendors will come back and say, well, if you kept up with the latest version all the time, then this wouldn't be an issue. But we all know that the latest versions are actually the more vulnerable versions, because if it hasn't had that explicit set of testing, you haven't got hundreds of thousands of people using it. Do you know what I mean? Version 10 of Windows is getting better because, of course, millions of more people are using it. But right at the very beginning, if you remember, I think there were loads of security vulnerabilities. So keeping up with the latest version should actually be much more risky for you as an organization than actually having a version that's slightly older. So you're caught in this, in this to and fro of how do I keep up to date in order to avoid obsolescence? How do I make sure that I don't go too far ahead so that I actually end up with more security problems rather than having all the patches? Do you know what I mean? I mean, these are only my opinions. It's not of ASI. I've only been here 2 weeks. But you get that general feeling throughout the business. Throughout the industry. And
in your opinion, again, do you feel that the vendors put pressure on you?
Yeah, I raised a call with a vendor, and I said I'm on version 10, and the first thing they're going to say is move to version 11. That's their first point of call on anything. Is if you upgrade, it'll fix that problem. Do you know what? I've upgraded loads of software. And very rarely does that actually end up fixing the problem that I originally called up for. But I've now spent a ton of money upgrading it to the latest version, and now I still have exactly the same problem.
Isn't that a very simplistic response from a help desk? Because, an upgrade takes time. You got to go through change control, you got to do an impact assessment, you got to do a risk assessment, you probably have to stand up a project team, you got to get budget for the project. So really, it's just actually telling you to upgrade is a nonsense, because it's a process that takes time.
I can pay someone from Office Angels to go and make those types of decisions to tell customers to upgrade to the latest version. it's not really what I paid maintenance for, and the millions of pounds I end up paying for it, Maintenance and software support and updates is what I've actually invested in when I've gone and paid the vendor. A little bit more support in relation to that would be much more useful.
So it sounds to me, and I think I see this all the time, what started out as something very positive in the industry, as in you were encouraged to upgrade and update, and they were good things because you were getting something new, as being turned completely on its head now. It's seen as almost a negative. Yeah, I think we'd agree.
Instead of being narrow and deep, I was just going to say, instead of being narrow and deep, which is what you want, I bought this software to do this one particular thing, and they have more and more functionality to that one different thing. So it becomes narrow and deep. Now software tends to be broad and shallow. Do you know what I mean? So they actually adding functionality at the side, which isn't actually the bit of functionality you wanted. So I think more software is becoming much broader rather than actually staying with its core remit and being narrow and deep, if you know what I mean.
You know what I mean. I'd say you're going to have your work cut out where you're going to, like all companies, and I really wish you the best of luck at Aberdeen Standard Investments and in Edinburgh.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for joining us. I think we're done for time.
Yeah, that was some great insights, Danny. Appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Very thought-provoking as ever.
And we look forward to speaking to everybody in a few weeks' time. Yeah.